Hey guys, and welcome back to my CCNA 200-301 course. Patrice is here, and in this video we are going to configure and verify NAT. Are you ready? Let's get started. This is our today's scenario. We have three PCs here with the range of 10.0.0/24. They are connected to a router here, router 1. And router 1 is connected to our router 2, which is our main focus in this video. This is where actually we are going to configure and verify NAT. And this router has a public IP address here, as you can see, and it is connected to another router. And finally, we have a server like Google server. But in this video, our focus is not on the connectivity. So it doesn't matter if our PCs are able to access the Google server. It's all about configuring and verify NAT, so you can see what would happen when you go with a private IP address to a router that is going to NAT your source address to a public IP address. Let's go and see how we can configure and verify NAT on this router. Let's start with a static NAT configuration. If you remember from the previous video, our focus in CCNA 200-301 course is on source NAT, and we are not talking about destination NAT. Again, if you remember from the previous video, for a static NAT, I mentioned you have to have one IP address per the IP address you want to NAT to. For example, you have to have one public IP address per one private IP address you need to NAT. So it's a one-to-one correlation. And you have to configure this one-to-one correlation based on your setup. So for this example, I'm going to allow 10.0.0.1 to be NATed from 10.0.0.1 to something in this range. First thing is you need to figure out which side of your router gonna be your inside and which side of your router gonna be your outside based on the NAT terminology we spoke in the previous video. So for our router 2, gig 00 gonna be our inside and gig 01 gonna be our outside. And why we need this? Because we need to run a command on these two interfaces. So first we go to interface gig 0/0, and then we have to say IP NAT inside, and this is our inside interface. And on gig 01, we say IP NAT outside. So IP NAT inside here, because this is the inside side of our NAT configuration, and this is the outside of our NAT configuration. And the command you need to put for configuring the static NAT is on the global configuration mode. And we say IP NAT inside source, because we're going to do source NAT, and then a static. And this means that we are going to configure a static NAT router. Okay, what do we need to put here? The one we need to put here is the inside local IP address, which is 10.0.0.1 in our case. And the next one is inside global IP address. What is going to be NATed to? And I'm going to NAT this to 52, 11, 22, and 31. So with this command, we say that we want to do an inside NAT, a static source NAT, and we want to NAT 10.0.0.1 to 52, 11, 22, 31. To trigger that NAT, we have to generate some traffic. So on PC1, I'm going to ping 8.8.8.8, okay? It doesn't matter if it has connectivity or not. I added the static routes from here to here and from here to here, and we configured NAT here, so I'm expecting something should have happened on the router. We normally use two verification commands to verify NAT. The first one and the most important one is show IP NAT translations. And this shows you what is going on. And as you can see, our inside local is 10.0.0.1 and our inside global is 52.11.22.31, which is the address we configured for this static NAT. And this is our outside local and this is our outside global, which in the case of source NAT, both would be the same. The other verification command we can use is show IP NAT statistics. And this gives you some information about what is going on with your NAT. And maybe the most important parameters are these two. You can verify which interface is the outside interface, which interface is the inside interface. How many hits did you have? I mean, how many NATs have happened and how many misses? Misses means that if a traffic came through and there wasn't any NAT entry in the NAT table for that specific traffic and router had to create a new NAT entry in the table. Now I want to capture the traffic when it enters router 2 and also when it leaves router 2 so you can see what exactly NAT's doing on your packet. So I'm going to router 2 and I have to maximize this and then say capture on gig 00 and also do capture on gig 01. And I have my continuous ping on the PC. So if we have a look at these two captures, this one is on the outside. First, let's have a look at the inside one, which is this one, I guess. Yeah. If you have a look at one of these packets from 10.0.0.1 to 8.8.8, you can see that the source address is 10.0.0.1 and the destination address is 8.8.8.8. This is when the traffic actually enters router 2. And now if you go to the other side and have a look at the traffic when it leaves the router, and now you can see that this one actually, you can see that now your source address is translated to 52.11.22.31 and the destination address is still the same, 8.8.8.8. This is how actually you configure your NAT and allow the traffic going outside of your router with a public IP address or any other IP address you want. For dynamic NAT configuration, we need two extra configuration as well. One is defining a pool and one is defining an access list. We haven't talked about the access list as of yet, but in the next section, which is the upcoming section, we will be talking about the ACL. For now, I just show you how you can define this ACL and then the concepts of ACL, how does it work, etc. I'll be covered in the upcoming videos. So for dynamic NAT, we have that IP NAT inside and IP NAT outside, still on the right interfaces. Then we have to define our pool. So instead of correlating individual IP addresses for being NAT, we define a pool and let the router to actually execute the NAT and assign and correlate the private IP addresses to public IP addresses. To define a pool, we actually we go to global configuration mode and we say IP NAT pool, and then we give it a name like LearnIt, and then we define our start and end range of IP address we want to use in that pool, which in this case is 52.11.22 like 10 to 52.11.22.20, and the net mask of this pool gonna be 255.255.255.0. So if I go back and review this again, you say IP NAT pool and then give it a name and then the start IP address of that spool and the end IP address of that spool, and then the subnet mask of your pool that you want to assign it, which my case is 255.255.255.0. And now we have to define our access list. Access list actually allows what you want to allow to be NATed, which IP addresses are allowed to be NATed in this NAT in this NAT configuration. So in global configuration mode, I say access list, and I have to give it a number, and then we permit our whole subnets. You can do based on individual IP addresses, so you can pick like 10.0.0.1, 10.0.0.2, 10.0.0.3. These are the only IP addresses I want to allow to be NATed. Okay. In this case, I want to say the whole subnet, and we have to use the wildcard mask here, which is 0.0.255. So I allowed the whole subnet to be NATed to the public IP addresses I just defined. And now it's the time to correlate the NAT, the pool we defined and the access list we just defined here. We say IP NAT inside source. Again, we want to do an inside source, but here instead of a static, we say list, which means the access list. Which access list is allowed? Access list number 1. And then which pool you want to use for this NAT and this access list, I want to use pool LearnNet. In this case, you have actually configured everything you need. And run show IP NAT translations, you can see that now we should have more IP addresses here. So 10.1.1.1, sorry, 10.0.0.0 NATed to 52.11.22.10, 10.0.0.0.2 NATed to 52.11.22.11, and 10.0.0.3 NATed to 52.11.22.12. So you can see again, still there is one-to-one correlation, but this time you didn't say that which IP address needs to be NATed to what IP address. So this is the router who picked the correlation between the private IP addresses and the public IP addresses. To clear this NAT table, in privilege mode, we say clear IP NAT translation. And then if you put a star here, you can mention that everything. Okay. So you say that I want to clear all of my NAT table entries. So if you do that and run show IP NAT translation again, you will see that only 10.0.0.1, which is constantly pinging 8.8.8, will have the entry in the table. And the rest you just saw or disappeared because you cleared the NAT translation. If you want to delete a specific entry, you can say that clear IP NAT translation and then inside and then global IP address, or outside and then local IP address. And in this way you can delete individual entries rather than clearing the whole NAT table. For NAT overload or path or port address translation, as I mentioned in the previous video, we don't need extra IP addresses and we will be NATing everything on the interface of the router IP address. So in this case, I assign 52.11.22.33 on this gig 01, and you can see that everything will be NATed to this interface IP address. For NAT overload or path, you don't need that pool definition because we're going to use this interface IP address, but you need that access list configuration and also that IP NAT inside and IP NAT outside, which we have it on the router now. So we have those three prerequisites And now we just need to define that NAT overload or path on the router. To do that, in the global configuration mode, we say IP-NAT inside source. This was in common in all three circumstances. And then list again, like the dynamic NAT, and then the access list number. And this time, instead of saying pool and give the pool number, we say interface. And which interface? Interface gigabit 0/1, and then overload. So IP-NAT inside source list, your access list number, interface, which interface IP address going to be used for this NAT, interface gig 01, and then overload keyword, and press enter. And now if I generate traffic from all three PCs, and now if you go to router 2 and say show IP-NAT translations, you can see that 10.0.0.1, I have continuous ping, so the numbers are too high. So 10.0.0.1 is NATed to 52.11.22.33, which is the interface IP address. 10.0.0.2 also NATed to this IP address, and if I scroll down, you can see that 10.0.0.3 also NATed to the same IP address. But these three PCs will receive their traffic without any intervention because the ports are involved in here as well. And as you can see, each of these entries create a unique flow. So nothing will be actually interfere with each other. So every PC can still receive its own traffic without any intervention, without receiving any other, any conflicts between the data, etc. Because adding the port numbers, source and destination to the traffic and the IP address will create a unique entry in the NAT table. So router knows that if the traffic comes from date destined to this port, has to go to this IP address and this port. So yeah, this is how the traffic can be segregated. The last command I want to show you, but before that I have to go to global configuration mode and say logging console because I disabled the logging. The last command is the debug command, and the command is debug IP-NAT. And as you can see, now it shows you every NAT is happening on this device. If I say on debug all, because it's going to mess our interface, you can see the debug of the NATs that are happening on your router, and you can verify if there is any issue, if something needs to be added to your configuration, or there is a misconfiguration on your router and this IP address shouldn't NAT to this IP address, etc. You can get it from this debug command as well. Alright guys, this was our today's video. This video, like the previous one, covers 4.1 exam topic, configure and verify inside source NAT using static and pools. And in the next video, I'll be talking about syslogs. I wish you enjoyed today's video and see you in the next one.